My name is Rose, and I was 1 inch from knocking on my parents' door when I heard my father tell my brother, Colton, not to worry about his debt because I would cover it. Then he said the sentence that made my stomach turn cold. She never refuses family. I stood there in my nurse shoes after a 16-hour shift, realizing they hadn't invited me to dinner. They had invited my bank account. When I told my husband Theo, he didn't comfort me. He said, "Move every penny tonight." 1 week later, Mom showed up with papers already filled out and my name waiting. Before I get into what happened next, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. And if your family has ever mistaken your kindness for permission, tell me what you would have done, because that week, I learned silence can be more dangerous than saying no. In my family, being reliable was treated like a compliment until it became a job nobody paid me for. I was 34, a senior nurse at a hospital where the vending machine coffee tasted burnt and the hallway lights never really turned off. I worked 12-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts, holidays, weekends, whatever the schedule demanded. I knew how to stay calm when monitors screamed and families panicked. I knew how to smile through back pain. I knew how to keep going when my feet felt like glass. And somehow, that made my family believe I could handle anything. My brother Colton was different. Colton was charming in the way people forgive too easily. He could miss a payment, lose a job, break a promise, and somehow my parents would sigh like life had been unfair to him. If I made one tired face at Thanksgiving, Mom would pull me aside and whisper, "Rose, don't start. Your brother's had a hard year. Colton had a lot of hard years." Our family looked normal from the outside. Sunday dinners, framed photos in the hallway, Mom's cinnamon candles burning near the kitchen window, Dad watching football with the volume too high, a grocery store cake on birthdays because Mom said homemade was too much fuss now, but under all that ordinary noise. There was a rule nobody said out loud. Colton got rescued. I got praised for doing the rescuing. When I was 22, Mom helped me open my first real bank account after nursing school. At the time, it felt sweet, responsible, adult. Years later, that same account became the place my overtime went, the account I used when Mom called about a late utility bill, or Dad said he was short until Friday, or Colton needed just a little help to get back on track. Nobody forced me at first. That was the worst part. They asked softly. They sounded embarrassed. They promised it was the last time, and every time I said yes. Mom would touch my arm and say, "That's why we can always count on you." I used to think that meant I was loved. Theo never said much about it in the beginning. He would just watch me hang up the phone and stare at the kitchen counter like I had left a piece of myself there. Then he would ask, "Did they ask how you were before they asked for money most of the time?" I couldn't answer. So when Mom called that evening and said, "Come over for dinner, nothing special," I wanted to believe her. I wanted the porch light to mean home. But as I stepped toward that familiar front door, I heard my father's voice through the wood. Low, certain, already decided. Theo was still in the car because I told him I'd go in first. I remember the night air being sharp enough to sting my nose. The porch boards creaked under my nurse shoes, the same boards I had run across as a kid with scraped knees and popsicle sticky fingers. Through the front window, I could see the warm blur of the living room lamp. Everything looked normal. That almost made it worse. I lifted my hand to knock. Then I heard Colton's name. Dad's voice came through the door, low and firm. The voice he used when the decision had already been made and everyone else was just catching up. "Don't stress about the debt, we'll have your sister cover it. She never refuses family." My hand stayed in the air. For a second, I didn't even breathe. Debt, sister, cover it. The words landed one at a time, heavy and clean, like dishes being set on a table for a meal I hadn't agreed to attend. Mom said something next, softer, sweeter, worse. "Rose will understand. She always does. We'll tell her Colton's in real trouble, and she'll help." Colton mumbled, "It's a lot." "Mom," Dad cut in, "around 45,000, but Rose makes good money. She works all that overtime. She doesn't have kids. She can handle it." I felt something in me go very still. Not angry yet, not crying, just still. Because that was the moment I realized they hadn't invited me to dinner to ask for help. They had invited me to dinner so they could place a bill in front of me and call it family. Colton didn't say, "No, that's not fair." He didn't say, "I made the debt. I'll fix it." He just let out this small breath, almost relieved, like my life had become the emergency exit for his bad choices. Then Dad laughed, not a nervous laugh, a finished business laugh. That sound did something to me. I lowered my hand without touching the door. My fingers were cold. My throat felt tight. I backed away from the porch one slow step at a time, careful not to make the boards groan again. By the time I reached the car, Theo had already sat up straighter. He looked at my face and unlocked the door before I touched the handle. What happened? I got in, shut the door, and told him everything. I repeated Dad's words, Mom's words, the amount, Colton's silence, even the laugh. Theo didn't interrupt me once. When I finished, he looked at my parents' house through the windshield. The porch light glowed yellow against the dark, like it had no idea what it was hiding. Then he said, quietly, "Tomorrow morning, you move every penny out of that account." I stared at him. "Every penny? Every penny," he said, "before they turn this into a crisis you're expected to solve." I didn't understand all of it yet, but I understood his face. Theo wasn't scared of my family stealing from me. He was scared they already knew exactly how to make me hand it over. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Theo in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slow circles above me. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept walking back up those porch steps. She never refuses family. That sentence didn't just hurt. It explained my whole life. Every time Mom called with that careful little pause in her voice, every time Dad said, "You're the stable one," every time Colton messed up and somehow I was the solution, they hadn't been grateful. They had been training me. By sunrise, I felt hollowed out. Theo made coffee without asking. He set the mug beside me at the kitchen table and sat across from me. Quiet, waiting. "I feel stupid," I whispered. "You're not stupid," he said. "You're kind." They learned how to use that. That was the first sentence that made me cry. Not loud, not dramatic. Just tears sliding down my face while the coffee went cold between my hands. At 9 that morning, I called my bank. My voice shook at first, but the woman on the phone was calm and professional, and somehow that helped. I opened a new account that only I controlled. I moved my savings, my overtime deposits, everything I had been quietly building for years. Then I went through the payments. That part was worse than I expected. A utility bill here, a car repair there, a few hundred for Colton when he was between jobs, a larger payment for something Dad promised he would pay back after tax season. None of it had ruined me. That almost made it easier to ignore, but lined up together. Those bills told the truth. I had not been helping once. I had been funding a pattern. Theo sat beside me while I canceled anything connected to my family that did not belong to me. He didn't touch my laptop. He didn't tell me what to click. He just stayed close enough that I didn't feel alone. Every few minutes, guilt would rise in my throat. What if Mom cries? What if Dad says I'm ungrateful? What if Colton really can't handle this? Then I would hear Dad laugh again, and I would keep going. For the next week, I practiced one word. No, I said it while folding laundry. I said it while brushing my teeth. I said it in the car after another long shift, my hands wrapped around the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. No. Such a small word, but in my family, it felt like breaking a law. Theo never pushed me to hate them. He never called them monsters. That would have been easier, honestly. But he knew the truth was more complicated than that. I loved them. I missed the version of them I thought I had, and I was grieving people who were still alive. On Tuesday afternoon, I was home in sweatpants, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. When tires rolled slowly into our driveway, I looked out the window. Mom stepped out first, dressed like she was going to church. Colton followed, shoulders low, eyes on the ground. Then I saw the folder in Mom's hand. My stomach went cold. 3 sharp knocks hit my front door, and suddenly I understood exactly why Theo had told me to move every penny. I opened the door before the 3rd knock fully faded. Mom smiled too fast. "Rose," she said, like she was relieved to see me, even though she was the one who had driven over uninvited. We were just in the neighborhood. Colton stood behind her with his hands buried in his jacket pockets. He looked thinner than usual, but not broken, not desperate, just uncomfortable enough to know this was wrong, and not brave enough to stop it. I stepped aside. Mom walked in like she still owned the air in my house. Her perfume followed her down the hallway, sharp and floral, mixing with the lemon cleaner I had used that morning. Colton lingered near the door until I said, "You can come in." He flinched at my voice. Good. I made tea because I needed something to do with my hands. Mom sat at my kitchen table and placed that folder beside her purse. Not on the floor, not tucked away, but right there where I could see it. Like bait. For 11 minutes. She pretended this was a visit. She asked about work. She commented on my curtains. She said Theo must be keeping busy. She told me Dad had been tired lately, then watched my face like she was waiting for guilt to bloom. It didn't, finally. She touched the folder. "Rose." "Honey," she said. "We need to talk about Colton." Colton stared into his tea. Mom opened the folder and spread out bills and payment summaries like she was setting a table. The number at the top was rounded, but it was still enough to make the room feel smaller. Around $45,000. "Your brother got himself into a difficult situation," she said. "And before you react, your father and I already talked through the best solution." There it was. Not a request, a decision. I looked at Colton. "Did you talk through it too?" His jaw moved. But no words came out. Mom rushed in. "He's embarrassed. Don't make this harder on him." I almost laughed. Harder on him. She slid one page toward me. "You wouldn't have to cover all of it at once. You could make a large payment now, then help with the rest over time. With your overtime, it's manageable." Manageable. Like my exhaustion was an available resource. Like my 16-hour shifts were a family coupon. I placed my tea down carefully. "No." The word was quiet. Mom blinked. "Excuse me, no," I said again. This time, stronger. "I'm not paying Colton's debt." The smile left her face in pieces. "Rose, don't be selfish." There it was, the old hook, the one she had used my whole life. "Your brother is drowning," she said. "Family helps family." I looked at the folder, then at Colton, then back at my mother. "I heard you." The kitchen went silent. Mom's fingers froze on the edge of the paper. "I came to your house last week," I said. I was about to knock when I heard Dad tell Colton not to stress about the debt because I would cover it. Colton's face drained. Mom sat back slowly. I kept going because if I stopped, I might shake, I heard him say. "She never refuses family." "I heard you agree. I heard Colton sit there and let you plan my money before I was even in the room." "Rose," Mom said, but her voice had lost its sweetness. "No, you don't get to soften it now." Colton finally looked at me. I didn't know how to ask. "You didn't ask," I said. "You waited for them to do it for you." His eyes dropped. Mom straightened. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us." Theo walked in then, calm as a shadow. He didn't touch me, he didn't speak for me. He just stood beside the counter with his arms relaxed, reminding everyone in that kitchen that I was not alone anymore. Mom noticed. Her face tightened. I slid the papers back toward her. "I will not pay this. I will not sign anything. I will not move money. I will not become the emergency exit for choices I didn't make." Dad called right then. Mom looked at the screen, then at me. Like she had found backup. She answered and put him on speaker. "Rose." Dad snapped. "Stop making this dramatic." My hands went cold, but my voice didn't. "You made it dramatic when you turned my life into your plan." He went quiet. So I said the sentence I had practiced all week. The woman who never refuses family doesn't live here anymore. No one moved. Mom's mouth opened. then closed. Colton stared at the table like the wood grain might save him. Even Dad, loud, certain Dad, had nothing ready. I stood and opened my front door. If Colton wants help finding a financial counselor, I'll send him a name. But the debt is his. The shame you tried to hand me is yours, and the answer is no. Mom gathered the papers with trembling hands. Colton whispered, "I'm sorry." I believed he meant it. I also knew sorry was not a payment plan. When the door closed behind them, the house went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. For the first time, that quiet did not feel empty. It felt like mine. For 3 days. My phone lit up like a hospital monitor. Mom sent long messages about disappointment. Dad left voicemails that started angry and ended with him saying I was tearing the family apart. Colton sent one text. "You were right. I'm sorry." I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to answer with every bill I had ever paid, every holiday I had worked through, every birthday dinner I had missed because someone else needed just a little help. But I didn't. I had already said what mattered. So I sent him the name of a financial counselor in one sentence. "If you want to fix this, fix it without using me." Then I put my phone face down. Theo and I spent that weekend at the kitchen table, the same table where Mom had spread out Colton's debt like it belonged to me. This time, the papers were ours, our budget, our savings, our future. We went through every payment connected to my family and cut what needed cutting. Nothing cruel, nothing dramatic, just clean lines. If it was not my bill, it was not mine to carry. If it was not my promise, it was not mine to keep. The first time Mom called and I didn't pick up right away. My chest tightened like I had done something illegal. Then nothing happened. The roof didn't cave in. The world didn't end. I was still a daughter, still a sister, still myself, just not available for use. A month later, I went back to my parents' house, not for dinner, not to apologize. I went because I had left an old photo album there, the one with pictures from nursing school. Mom opened the door and, for once, didn't step aside like she expected me to rush in. We stood there with the doorway between us. The porch boards creaked under my shoes again. But this time, I was not hiding from the truth on the other side. I was carrying it. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. "Are we ever going to be normal again?" she asked. I looked past her at the hallway photos. All those smiling faces lined up like proof of a family that had never hurt anyone. "No," I said gently, "but maybe we can be honest." She didn't answer, and for once, I didn't fill the silence for her. I took my album, walked back to my car, and felt the evening air hit my face. It smelled like rain. It smelled like something finally washed clean. For years, I thought being loved meant being useful. I thought if I gave enough, paid enough, stayed quiet enough, my family would finally see me as more than the responsible one. But that night on the porch taught me the truth. Some people do not notice your sacrifice because they are too busy building their lives on top of it. I still love my family, but I do not finance my place in it anymore. Colton's debt stayed Colton's debt. My parents' disappointment stayed theirs. And my peace, the thing I had almost traded away my whole life, finally stayed with me. That old front door used to feel like home. Now it feels like a reminder. You can stand outside a door and still choose yourself. If your family has ever turned your kindness into an obligation, share your story in the comments. Someone listening may need your courage tonight, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story.